Okay, today I'm going to be presenting PTSD in ethnic minorities and how it affects their lives. What is post-traumatic stress disorder? It's a mental health disorder that occurs whenever people experience or witness a traumatic event. 70% of Americans will experience at least one traumatic event in their lifetime, but 20% of them will go on to develop PTSD, which is about 14%. I'm here to argue that there should be an alternate social support system for ethnic minorities suffering from PTSD. There's 6 main contributors to PTSD, which is traumatic stress, discrimination and racism, differences in coping and support system, immigration, which comes with acculturation and dissociation. War stressors. Ethnic minorities usually have higher exposures to war zones than their white counterparts. This also happens because of their identification crisis with their enemies, such as their fellow soldiers attacking them because they think they're the enemy, or them being criticized because of their culture. These are the rates of PTSD in Vietnam veterans in 1990. As you can see, the white veterans have 14% rates, and their African and Hispanic counterparts have over 20% rates. Racism. The DSM has recognized racism as a factor to develop PTSD. This is because cumulative racist events can traumatize a victim. 1 in 10 blacks will develop impairment trauma, which means that they can't go on and live their daily lives, daily activities, because they're too scared of, let's say, being attacked in the middle of the street or their neighborhood's not being good enough. There's also problems with communicating. Whenever they go to their clinicians, there is a high chance that they will not talk about their racism because they feel like either their white clinician will not believe them, there will be disbelief, or they will not understand what racism feels like. There's also immigration. Pre-migration is the reason why people want to migrate to a different country. There's usually war, poverty, and political violence. However, it doesn't just stop there. During migration, there will also be some traumatic events because of unauthorized entry. This usually causes stress in parents because they want their children to be safe. So there's usually parent-child separation. Parent-child separation means that the parent will go on to another country, let's say the US, and their children will be left behind with a family member. 1/3 of children that are born in a foreign country will be left with a family member as well the parents go to another country. This also causes more stressors and trauma because the child does not get to live their childhood with their parents. There's also an exposure to physical hardships. Whenever someone is going across the border, there's a high chance that there will be soldiers waiting for them, there will be shooting, tackling, so this causes more traumatic experiences. Once you're past the border, it doesn't end again. There's post-migration trauma, such as racial or ethnic discrimination due to your phenotypical characteristics. There's going to be segregation. Most of the people that migrate or immigrate to this country will be left in impoverished neighborhoods with high crime rates, which also expose people to more traumatic experiences. There's also acculturation. People need to learn how to speak English, which will help them to get better healthcare and better education. So how does this connect to the stimulus packet? There's attitudes towards Muslim women in the West, which shows a traumatic experience for the women who they're using their burqas because it's an option. They want to wear them, they want to show their culture. But Americans are trying to use this as an excuse to get into their country and get some oil and stuff like that. There's witness participant, there's eyewitness versus historians, technical historians who will go back and look at the views. This is how I came up with my solution. PTSD should not only be viewed by people researching and clinicians, there should also be a say by people who are experiencing PTSD. So my solutions are racial pairing of clinicians and patients. There's been a lot of people saying that whenever the patient and the clinician are of the same race, the patient is more likely to tell them about their problems. For example, a black person who has a black clinician will be able to talk about racism. They will be able to talk about how they feel without feeling that disbelief. There should also be assessing for racial and ethnic stressors. 20% of symptoms of PTSD can be missed if you do not check for racial and ethnic stressors. This is because whenever racial and ethnic stressors usually come with well, this might be bibliography.
All right. All right. Okay. So, is it?
No.
All right. All right. Let me ask you 2 questions. All right. So, what information did you need that you weren't able to locate, and how did you go about trying to find it?
I was trying to look for information not only about specific ethnic groups. I was able to find, of course, about Hispanics. It was a lot about immigration, about blacks, a lot about racism. I wanted to find a lot of information of not only certain ethnic groups, but how it affects all of them. And so what I had to do was research a lot about specific ones and make connections between them to see how it affects not only certain ethnic groups, but like the majority as well.
Okay. And my second question is, so how do you think this will look? What will be the real world consequences or implications of this if your conclusion was implemented?
I believe there will be lower PTSD rates because ethnic minorities will be able to talk about their problems, and there will be more research or more information on how to solve these problems if we know how the people experiencing PTSD are affected by them.
Okay. All right.